Maddie, and today I've come to the cinema. I love watching movies, but there's one treat I like to have most when I'm watching a film. Can you guess what it is? Yes, it's popcorn, of course. Thank you. Do you like popcorn? But have you ever wondered how popcorn works? Why and how does it pop? Let's find out.
How does it work?
Popcorn!
When we eat popcorn, it looks like this. Soft, white and fluffy. They look a bit like little clouds, don't they? But it starts out like this, as pieces of corn that we call kernels. But to turn this into popcorn, we need to cook it so that it gets hot. This is microwave popcorn, and inside the bag are lots of kernels of corn like the ones I've just shown you. And we're going to cook it inside the microwave. You might even cook popcorn like this at home.
Remember, you should always get a grown-up to help you use the microwave.
Nothing's happening yet, but that's because we need to wait for those kernels of corn to get really hot. It smells really good already, though. Can you hear that? The corn has started to pop, turning it into popcorn. Popping has slowed down. So do you know what that means? It means the popcorn is nearly ready. It's ready! Let's have a look, shall we? Oh, it's steamy and hot and it smells incredible. Careful, make sure you get a grown-up to do this bit for you though, because it's very hot. And there they are, ready to eat. But what happens inside the bag? How does a small kernel of corn turn into a piece of popcorn like this?
Every kernel of corn has a hard shell on the outside and a soft layer of white stuff called starch on the inside. And inside the starch, there's a tiny droplet of water. When the corn is heated, the starch melts and the drop of water starts to expand, which means it gets bigger. Eventually, it gets so hot, it starts to turn into steam, like when water boils in a kettle. The steam builds up inside the kernel of corn and pushes against the hard shell. Eventually, it can't hold it anymore and the pressure bursts the shell with a pop. As it pops, the starch pours out and immediately cools into the soft white bit we see when we look at popcorn. Let's see it for real, shall we?
My special camera will show us how. Let's take a look.
Because I couldn't put my special camera in the microwave, I filmed this popcorn being cooked in a pan. It pops exactly the same way. Wow, there they go. See how high the corn jumps. It's very quick. Let's see it again in super slow motion. Can you see the kernels heating up? As the kernel of corn gets hotter and hotter, so does that little droplet of water inside. It grows bigger and bigger inside until it turns into steam and just has to burst out, pushing the white starch out with it. Amazing.
I loved seeing how popcorn works. What was your favourite bit?
Can you remember the name for a piece of corn before it turns into popcorn? That's right, it's a kernel. Did you hear the sound the corn made when it popped? It was loud, wasn't it? And did you see the popcorn popping in slow motion? It jumped really high.
Now, I've got my popcorn ready to snack on later, but first, I need to make my dinner, and I'm going to have my favourite, pasta. Do you like pasta? I love all the different shapes and sizes, from small tubes to little shells. And of course, spaghetti. Pasta first came from Italy, but now you can buy it everywhere in the shops. You can buy fresh pasta, even dried pasta like this, or pasta sauces in jars. But what's in pasta and how is it made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
Pasta.
It all starts with a giant pasta making machine, and we're going to find out how dried pasta like this is made.
This is a pasta factory, and all these machines mean it's very noisy.
In this factory, pasta is made from 2 ingredients, water and something called semolina. This is semolina here. It looks like a yellow powder, but it's made from a type of wheat called durum wheat that grows in fields. It's also used to make some breakfast cereals. But when you mix water and semolina together, you get pasta. But we're going to need a lot more semolina than this. These huge tanks are full of semolina. Each one can hold about 150 tons worth. That's the same as about 150 cars. But how does all that semolina get from the tanks to inside the factory?
The semolina travels along this grey pipe and into the pasta making machine, where it will be mixed with water.
Water comes into the machine through this tank, and it's mixed with the semolina inside this silver tube. They're spun around together to make pasta dough.
Here it comes. This is what the mixture looks like.
This is the pasta dough, but at the moment it just looks like a pasta sausage. We want it to be a squiggly shape, and for that we need a special cutter. This metal disc is called a die, and the pasta dough is pushed through the die and all these little holes, and that's what gives the pasta its special squiggly shape.
Let's see what happens to the dough as it's pushed through the die.
Look at that! Can you see the golden pasta squiggling out of all the little holes in the die? It's like long blonde curly hair growing out of the machine. It looks really fun, but it's too long. That wouldn't fit on your plate for your dinner, would it? So we need to chop it into smaller bite-sized pieces. The cutter chops the pasta into the perfect sized pieces. And now they're tumbling down this slide, ready to go on to the next stage of the machine.
Look at all those cut pieces of pasta. The machine is bouncing them up and down to spread them out.
Let's use my special camera to get a closer look. The machine is bouncing the pasta, and it's making the pasta look like it's wiggling like worms.
The pasta is now the right size and shape, but it's still not finished. To make it hard, like the dry pasta you get at the shop, it needs to be dried.
The soft pasta falls into the dryer up there, and then it travels all the way through to come out the other end. Just look how enormous the dryer is. Let's see just how big the dryer is, shall we?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
It's 10 paces big. The pasta making machine is all controlled by a computer, and this shows us how the pasta is moving inside the dryer. It goes backwards and forwards along this blue line, and look, it's nearly ready to come out the other end.
After 4 hours in the dryer, the pasta is ready. It comes flying down this tube, which looks like a helter-skelter.
Look at that! That's amazing! Whoa! Can you hear the rattling noise? That's the sound of the dried pasta zooming down the helter-skelter into the bags below. It's going so quickly. I'd like to be a bit of pasta going down that. It would be really fun. The last stage is for the finished pasta to get packaged up and sent to food companies all over the UK. And that's a job for that robot. Inside each of these bags are hundreds of dried pasta shapes that look just like this. Do you know what this pasta shape is called? It's called macaroni. You might have even had macaroni and cheese for dinner. I loved seeing how pasta was made. Did you?
Do you remember the name of the special machine that pushes the pasta into shapes? That's right, it's a die. Did you hear the rattling sound of the dried pasta as it went zooming down the slide? And did you see the machine bouncing the pasta up and down? It looked like wiggly worms.
So the next time you have pasta for dinner, you'll know just how it's made. And when you have popcorn as a treat, you'll know how and why popcorn pops. See you next time. Hello, I'm Maddie, and today I'm getting ready for a party. What do you like to do at a party? I like to play games, like Pass the Parcel. I like to have a cake with candles. And I really like to blow bubbles. To make lots of bubbles, I've got a bubble machine. Can you hear the fan as it blows air into the bubbles? I love watching them float in the air and seeing how they pop. But do you know how a bubble is made or why it pops? How do bubbles work? Let's find out. How does it work?
Bubbles.
To make bubbles, you need 2 main ingredients. The first one is water, and the second one is soap, like washing up liquid that you use to clean the dishes with. I'm going to add a bit of soap to the water. Let's give this bubble mixture a try. Here we go. Ready? Can you see the way the bubbles come out of the wand? I think we should take a look at that with my special slow motion camera. Slow motion means that we can see things that happen really quickly, much slower. So let's use it and see what it looks like when I blow air through the bubble mixture in the wand. Here goes.
Wow! Look how the bubble mixture stretches and then breaks off into a wobbly, round bubble.
Do you know what that round shape's called? That's right, it's called a sphere. Look at that lovely sphere-shaped bubble. But do you know how soap and water make bubbles and why bubbles are a round shape? To find out, I think we need to take an even closer look.
When we blow a bubble using bubble mixture, it makes a round shape made of bubble film. The bubble film has 3 layers. A thin layer of water sandwiched between 2 layers of soap. Inside the soap layers are millions of soap molecules. Each soap molecule has 2 parts, a head that likes water and a tail that doesn't like water. The heads of the soap molecules push towards the water, while the tails pull away from the water. The pulling and pushing makes the mixture stretchy enough to blow bubbles with. So when we blow air through the bubble wand, the mixture stretches out. At first it's wobbly, but because the soap molecules are pushing and pulling in every direction, the bubble quickly makes the tightest shape it can around the air inside, making a sphere-shaped bubble.
Bubbles are so interesting, aren't they? They're made because of the way water and soap work when they're put together. But to help us understand this, we need to know that water has something called surface tension. Can you see the top of the water just here? It almost looks like it's got a kind of skin on the top, doesn't it? And that's because every droplet of water is made up of millions of tiny water molecules. And those water molecules like to cling together really tightly. And it's because of the way they cling together that makes that skin. And that's what we call surface tension. I can show you surface tension if I use a paper clip just here. Paper clips are made of metal, so they're heavy. So you might think that a paper clip would sink if we put it in water. But can you see? The paper clip is floating. And that's because of all those water molecules that are clinging together really tightly, making surface tension, which is stopping the paper clip from sinking to the bottom. Now watch what happens when I put a little bit of soap onto the top of the water. Did you see the paper clip sink to the bottom? That's because of the way soap and water act when they're mixed together. All of those soap molecules work really hard to pull the water molecules apart, and that makes the mixture more stretchy. Stretchy enough for the paper clip to sink to the bottom.
But how does surface tension affect bubbles in the air?
Can you see that the bubbles pop as soon as I try to touch them? That's because when we touch a bubble with our dry hands, we break the bubble's surface tension. Our hands have a little bit of oil in them and that keeps them nice and soft, but soap loves oil. That's why we use it to clean dirty, oily dishes. So when a soap bubble lands on our oily hands, those soap molecules try to take the oil away, but this bursts the bubble. So what can I use to try and help me catch a bubble without it bursting? I'm going to use a glove. Now let's see what happens. Whoa! The glove is stopping the soapy bubble mixing with the oil on my hands, which means I can catch the bubble and even bounce it. Wow! I loved finding out how bubbles work. Did you? What was your favourite part?
Can you remember what it was that stopped the paperclip from sinking in the water? That's right, surface tension. Did you hear the sound the bubble machine made? And did you see the bubbles being blown in slow motion on my special camera?
So the next time you blow bubbles at a party, you'll know how the mixture works and how you can stop them from bursting so quickly. But you know what else I love at birthdays? Party food. What's your favourite type of party food? I think carrot sticks are delicious. And wobbly jelly is really funny. But most of all, for a special treat, I like to have chocolate. But do you know where chocolate comes from or how it's made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
Chocolate.
In this factory, they make lots of different types of chocolate. Like chocolate cars and chocolate bunnies. Whoa, look at all of these chocolate eggs. It's like a spinning chocolate tree. But did you know that chocolate actually comes from one of these? It's a cocoa pod, and it's a fruit that grows on a tree. Inside a cocoa pod, you get cocoa beans, and these can be ground down into a chocolatey paste. And if you mix that with some sugar, milk powder and cocoa butter, it makes a delicious chocolate mixture. The chocolate mixture arrives at the factory in huge tanker lorries like these.
It's pumped through a pipe into the factory. And once the chocolate mixture has arrived, it's time to make all the different fillings that go inside the chocolates.
They're all different flavours. What's your favourite flavour? I really like caramel and fudge. Shall we see how they're made?
This is where the fillings for the chocolates are made. And today, Gareth is making caramel.
The main ingredients in caramel are sugar, butter and cream, and they all go inside this giant mixing bowl. After a few minutes of mixing, the caramel looks like this. Look at the way the sticky caramel is oozing off the mixing blades. It smells delicious.
The caramel needs to be left to set for 2 days before it's ready. This is some fudge filling made yesterday, which is now ready to be turned into fudge chocolates.
Fudge is creamy, spongy, and has a lovely vanilla taste.
The fudge filling is put into a hopper and then dropped into a machine called an extruder, which cuts the fudge into the right size and shape.
Look, it's a diamond shape. This machine is so fast.
It cuts out 158,000 shapes every hour.
That's enough to give every person in 2 enormous football stadiums a chocolate each.
Now the fudge is ready for its chocolate coating.
It's like a chocolate curtain. This machine is called an enrober. All of the fudge shapes move along the conveyor belt and get smothered with a layer of chocolate. Next, the chocolates are given a quick shake to get rid of any extra chocolate so they're all covered evenly. And look at the way they wobble, isn't it funny? Can you do the chocolate wobble? Give it a go.
Any leftover chocolate is sent down pipes to be used again. Next, the fudge chocolates are cooled to make them go nice and hard, and then they're given a second layer of chocolate.
To finish the chocolates off with a bit of decoration, they're drizzled with a lighter chocolate. And this is called sprinkling. At the end of the production line, the chocolates go into trays, ready to be put in boxes. The chocolates are emptied from the trays and they're placed on a conveyor belt. And at the end, a robot picks up each chocolate and puts it in the right space in the box. Look, here are our fuzz ones now. Can you see that red light shining down on the chocolates? That's a laser and it's scanning the chocolate so it knows what shape they are. It then sends a message through a computer to the robot so it knows which chocolate to pick up and where to put it in the box. How clever is that? And it works so quickly that it's a little bit hard to see. So I'm going to use my special camera to get a better look.
This is my slow motion camera, so we can see the robots working much more clearly. Wow, look how carefully the robot arms pick up the right chocolates and put them in exactly the right holes.
And here we have some finished chocolates, ready ready to be put in a box and sent across the country for us to enjoy as a special treat. All that's left to do is give them a try. I loved seeing how chocolates were made. Did you? What was your favourite part?
Do you remember what the fruit is called that chocolate is made from? That's right, it's a cocoa pod. Did you hear the sound the enrober machine made as it gave the chocolates a good shake? And did you see the robot arms as they picked up the chocolates and put them in the boxes? They were so fast.
So the next time you eat some chocolate at a party or maybe for a treat, you'll know how it was made. And when you blow some bubbles, you'll know how they work. I'll see you next time. Hello, I'm Maddie, and I've just sat down to have my lunch. That was yummy. I really enjoyed it. And there's no food left on my plate. But what's happening to the food I've just eaten? My food is being digested, which means it's gone into my body where it's being broken down and turned into energy that will keep me strong and healthy. But what's going on inside our bodies when we digest food? How does digestion work? Let's find out.
How does it work?
Digestion.
All living things, like us, need food. Just like a car needs fuel to go, our bodies need food to work properly. Food is our fuel. Do you have a favourite food?
Maybe it's swirly spaghetti or a yummy chicken curry with rice.
It's important we eat lots of different types of food, and there are 5 main food groups. On the yellow are types of food that we call carbohydrates.
These include foods like pasta, rice. Oh, there's some bread.
They give us energy.
In the red area is the protein group.
What can you spot? Eggs, some meat, fish, nuts, beans and lentils. They're like the building blocks for our body that help us grow and repair ourselves.
The green section gives us vitamins, minerals and fibre. But what are they?
That's right, fruit and vegetables. And this is important because it helps us to fight infection like a cold or a flu, and they keep us healthy.
The fourth group is dairy. Most dairy foods come from animal milk.
Here we've got cheese, yoghurt and cow's milk. But dairy foods give us an important mineral called calcium. And calcium helps to keep our teeth and bones strong and healthy.
You can also get calcium from milk made out of plants, like soya or almonds.
And on the purple, we have types of food called fats and sugars. It's important for us to have some fats because they help keep our bodies warm, they help us to use vitamins, and they keep our brains working properly. But there are 2 different types of fat.
Healthy fats, like nuts, seeds, and oily fish. And fats you should eat less of. They're in things like cake and chocolate, which also contain sugar.
Now for the fun part. We need the right amount of all 5 food groups to help our bodies work properly. We call it a balanced diet. It's easy to choose a balanced diet. We just need a plate.
Look, the plate is being split into different colours. Yellow is carbohydrate. Red is protein. Fruit and vegetables are green. Dairy is blue. And fats are purple. This is a balanced diet and shows us how much of each food group we should eat. So, what should I have for my balanced dinner?
I've got chicken for protein, rice for carbohydrates, carrots and beans for vegetables, with some yoghurt for dairy and banana for fruit.
Instead of chicken, I could also have some fish or beans for protein.
That all looked really tasty, didn't it? But what happens inside our bodies when we eat a balanced diet? To find out, I think we need to take a closer look.
When we put food in our mouths, we chew it. Glands glands, called salivary glands, create saliva, which make our food wetter and easier to swallow. As we swallow, the food goes down a pipe called the esophagus into the stomach. Inside the stomach, the food mixes with stomach acid and special chemicals our body makes, called enzymes. Enzymes help break down the food into tiny pieces, which then move into the small intestine. The proteins, fats and carbohydrates are broken down, and the vitamins and energy from the food are taken in our blood from the small intestines to be used around our bodies. The food that our bodies can't use is moved along to the large intestine. The water is taken away, and the leftover waste is made into feces, which we call poo. And finally, when all the food is processed, a message is sent to the brain to tell us we need to go to the toilet.
That was really interesting, wasn't it? Our bodies use the nutrients from the 5 food groups in lots of different ways.
But it's our heart that pumps the energy from our digested food around the body in our blood. So, when I run around, the more I run, the faster my heart pumps the energy around my body.
Can you remember what food group gives us the energy? That's right, carbohydrates. Every time I jump up and down, I'm using my muscles and my bones. Can you remember which food group helps our bodies to grow and repair? That's right, proteins.
And don't forget fruit and vegetables that help keep us healthy.
It was so interesting finding out how digestion works. What was your favourite part?
Do you remember the food group that gives us lots of energy? That's right, it's carbohydrates. Can you remember what pumps energy around our body so we can play? Yes, it's our heart. And did you see all the yummy food laid out on my colourful food group table?
Because we've been using lots of energy, I think we can have a special treat. What's your favourite dessert? I like something that's fruity, crunchy and gooey all at the same time.
Fruit and meringue.
But how is a meringue crunchy on the outside and gooey in the middle? Do you know how a meringue is made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
Meringue!
To find out how meringue is made, I've come here to a meringue bakery. Here they make lots of different types of meringue in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Purple ones, big ones and small ones, and even meringue drizzled in chocolate. The main ingredient we need to make any meringue is these, eggs. Inside an egg there are 2 parts. A thick, clear, gooey liquid called the egg white, and a thicker yellow part called the egg yolk. And the bit that we need to make meringue is the egg white.
The egg whites arrive at this factory already separated from the yolks, like this.
The next ingredient we need is sugar. And sugar comes in granules like this. But to make the perfect meringue, we need hot sugar.
The sugar is spread on these trays to be heated.
For our meringue mixture, we need 1, 2, 3, 4 trays of sugar fresh from the sugar oven.
While the sugar is heating, we need to start work on the egg whites.
First, the right amount of egg white is weighed on these scales, and then it gets put into a huge mixing bowl. Inside the mixing bowl, the egg whites are being whipped by a whisk. You might have a mixer a bit like this at home, but here, the whisks are massive.
It's bigger than my head.
Egg whites are made of protein, and inside protein are thousands of tiny little strings called amino acids.
When the egg white is runny, the amino acids are curled up closely together. When they're whisked, the amino acids unfold and wrap around air bubbles which the whisk makes as it spins, making the mixture fluffy and ready for sugar to be added.
Whoa, can you hear that alarm? That means the hot sugar is ready to come out of the sugar oven and get added to the fluffy egg whites.
The sugar needs to be whisked into the egg white for 15 minutes.
But because the whisk moves so quickly, I'm going to film this with one of my special cameras. This camera films in slow motion, which means when we watch things back, we can see them happening more slowly.
Look, in slow motion, you can see the whisk whipping the solid crystals of sugar into the fluffy egg white.
And this makes the mixture lovely and glossy, thick and sticky.
Which means it's time to add some flavour.
What colour do you think the strawberry meringue mixture is going to be? That's right, red. Liam and Kaylee use big spoons to scoop out the mixture. Then they give it a swirl and push it onto a tray with a spatula.
They're really starting to look like meringues now, aren't they?
They make 18 meringues on a tray, and there are 16 trays on a rack. That's 288 meringues just here.
And if you stacked each meringue on top of each other, they'd be taller than Buckingham Palace.
These look fantastic and good enough to eat, but they're not quite finished yet. The meringue are wheeled into this huge oven where they're baked at a low temperature for around 2 hours.
This is to stop the outside of the meringues from cracking and to make sure the inside stays lovely and gooey.
Inside the oven, the meringue is turned around like it's going for a ride on a carousel. This makes sure that they're baked evenly the whole way through so that we know the meringue is definitely cooked. They look tasty, don't they? Whoa! Crunchy on the outside and gooey in the middle. I loved finding out how meringue is made. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember the name of the machine that mixed the egg white? That's right, it's called a whisk. Did you hear the sound of the oven's alarm when it was ready to take the sugar out? And did you see how glossy and thick the whisk made the egg whites and sugar on my special camera?
So the next time you see a meringue or have one as a special treat, you'll know how it was made. And now you know what happens to food when we digest it in our bodies. Right, I think it's time to tuck in. I'll see you next time. Hello, I'm Maddie. Today I've got some things I want to recycle, so I've come to the recycling bins. There are lots of things we can recycle, like these old plastic bottles, paper and cardboard, and glass, like this glass jar that had jam in it. But what happens to glass when it's been put in the glass recycling? And how does an old jam jar get turned into something new? Do you know how glass recycling works? Let's find out. How does it work?
Glass recycling.
To find out how glass recycling works, I've come here to a gigantic glass recycling factory.
there are 3 huge storage bays. 1, 2, 3. And together they can hold around 3,000 tons of glass. That's the same weight as 157 double-decker buses. The glass is picked up from the storage bays by big diggers. Isn't that amazing? The digger tips the glass into that giant bin. It's called a hopper. There it goes! The hopper is connected to a conveyor belt. Not everything that arrives at the glass recycling factory is glass. There are other things that get muddled up with the glass too, like metal, plastic, stone, dirt and rubbish. We call these things contaminants, and it's the job of the glass recycling factory to separate the contaminants from the glass. Let's find out how they do it. This is called a screen. Can you see it's made of lots of metal rods with gaps in between? And it works a bit like a sieve. When it jiggles around, all of the small pieces fall through onto a conveyor belt below. And the big bits keep on going down that chute. All of the big bits drop into this machine. It's called a crusher. And inside, everything is crushed, so it's the same size as the smaller pieces. All the glass and contaminants come back together.
Can you see that some of the small pieces are bouncing around?
This makes all the pieces move along to the next machine.
This is called an extractor, and it works like a vacuum cleaner and sucks away any of those light contaminants. But it's pretty tricky to see, so I think we should film it with one of my special cameras. This camera films in slow motion, which means we can film something that happens quickly, but watch it back slowly. Whoa! And look! All of the light contaminants, like little pieces of plastic, are being sucked away, leaving the glass behind. The glass doesn't get sucked up by the extractor because it's heavier and it continues on its journey.
Now the glass is almost clean of contaminants. There's just some little bits of stone, brick and ceramic. Things like kitchen plates and mugs to get rid of.
This is an optical sorting machine, and it gets rid of stone, brick and ceramic using its own special camera. But to find out how it works, I think we need to take a closer look.
Glass and contaminants move along a conveyor belt into the optical sorting machine. A light hits the conveyor belt so the camera can see the object. The camera takes a picture of the object and sends it to a computer. The computer can tell the size and colour of the object and whether it's glass. When the computer finds a contaminant, like stone, it sends a signal to an air jet inside the machine to blast it away. Now all that's left is the glass. Another optical sorting machine separates the glass into different colours. First, the computer looks for green glass, then sends a message to the air jets to blast it into the green bin. Once the green glass is gone, another optical sorting machine finds clear glass, called flint, and blasts it into the clear bin, leaving just the brown glass, called amber.
Wow, that was so interesting.
Here's all the green glass that's been separated. It's like a waterfall. Look, there's all the amber glass. And the clear glass too. It's called flint.
Now the glass has been cleaned and sorted, it's ready to be used again and made into something new, like a jam jar. I loved finding out about how glass recycling works. What was your favourite part?
Do you remember the name of the machine that uses light to find things that aren't glass? That's right, it's called an optical sorting machine. Did you hear the sound of the glass as it was tipped out of the big recycling area? Did you see how the layer sucked all the light contaminants off the conveyor belt on my special camera. We use recycled glass in lots of different ways to make lots of different things, like glass jars. You can store lots in a glass jar, like honey, pickles, cookies, or as a special treat, you might have jam. Jam comes in lots of different flavours. Do you have a favourite? Mine is strawberry. Strawberry jam is made from strawberries. But how do strawberries or other fruit like blackberries or raspberries get turned into a thick jam you can spread on toast? Do you know how jam's made? Let's find out. How is it made?
Jam.
To find out how jam's made, I've come here to a jam factory. Today, they're making raspberry jam. Yum. Today, we're making one batch of raspberry jam, and that's about 160 jars, so we're going to need a lot of raspberries. To make the jam, we also need sugar and lots of lemons. This is James, and it's his job to make the jam. James starts by weighing the lemons. After the lemons are weighed, they're cut in half and squeezed to get all of the juice out, and I've been given special permission to help. So let's have a go at using this juicer. Thank you. Right, ready? Wow! The machine spins round and round, and look, can you see all of the juice flowing out of the spout here at the bottom? Lemons are really sour, and that's because they have something in them called citric acid. And it's the citric acid that gives them the sour taste. But nothing is wasted because we're going to use the lemon peel too. Next, James weighs out the raspberries. Here, they use frozen raspberries. He also weighs out the sugar. And now it's the fun part. We're going to heat everything up inside this, a boiling pan. Looks like a giant cake mixer, doesn't it? At the moment, the boiling pan is switched off. First, into the boiling pan goes the raspberries. That's a great splattering sound, isn't it? Next, the lemon juice and the lemon peel. The lemon peel is really important because it's got something special in it called pectin. And when pectin heats up and mixes with the water from the frozen raspberries and the citric acid from the lemon juice, it acts a bit like a fishing net or a web, helping to catch the other ingredients. And it's what makes the mixture thick and sticky. It takes about 15 minutes for the jam to cook, so I've set up one of my special cameras to film everything. That way, we can watch it back and speed everything up. Now, you should never go close to a hot pan, but I've got special permission to show you what happens to our jam. Can you see the ingredients spinning round and round and mixing together? Now, the sugar is added. And look, the jam is starting to cook. The boiling pan heats the ingredients to 100 degrees. That's really, really hot. The jam mixture still looks watery and runny, doesn't it? So how does it get thick and gooey like jam? Well, the water inside the jam mixture is heated up by the boiling pan, and it turns into water vapour or steam. We call this evaporation. Evaporating and the steam is misting up our camera. As the water evaporates, the jam starts to get thicker. All there is to do now is take out the lemon peel. The jam's nearly ready, but to test to find out if it's thick enough, I've got to do something called the plate test. So there's a blob of jam on the plate and it's cooled down. And if it's the right thickness, it should make little lines called wrinkles when I push it. Should we find out? Okay, let's see. Oh,
there you go. Lots of little wrinkles. So this is ready. Do you know what's making those wrinkles? It's the special chemical we find in the lemon peel called pectin. The jam is ready, so it's time to put it into jam jars.
The jam is poured into here. It's called a hopper.
The hopper is cone-shaped, so the jam will go to the bottom and then flow through the tubes to this machine called a depositor. And its job is to fill the jam jars.
And just the right amount comes out each time to fill one jar.
The lids are put on the jam jars when the jam and the air around the jam is still hot. But as everything cools down, it shrinks, and that leaves space inside the jar. So when we undo the lid, air can rush in, and this makes the jam jar pop up, and it sounds great. Listen to this. That sounds really good, doesn't it? I loved finding out how raspberry jam's made. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember the name of the special chemical that makes the jam thick? That's right, it's called pectin. Did you hear the sound the raspberries made as they tipped into the boiling pan? And did you see the ingredients being mixed together on my special camera?
So the next time you have jam as a special treat, you'll know how it's made. And when you see a glass jar, you'll know how lots and lots of glass has been recycled to make it. I'll see you next time. Today, I'm finding out about the weather. I wonder what the weather will be like today. I've got some water to drink, sunglasses because the sun's out, and an umbrella, which I can put up if it starts to rain. But why does it rain? And where does the rain come from? How does rain work? Let's find out.
How does it work?
Clouds and rain.
Water is really, really important. We need fresh water to drink, and animals and plants need water so they can stay healthy too.
You can see water in rivers, streams, and there's lots of salty water in the sea.
But the really interesting thing is that water comes from up there in the sky as drops of rain.
And the drops of rain that come from clouds are part of what's called the water cycle.
Have you ever noticed they're all sorts of different shapes and sizes? What shapes can you see? That cloud looks like a jumping rabbit. Oh, and that cloud looks a bit like a duck. There are lots of different types of clouds, but there are 3 main cloud shapes, and they all have special names. These are cirrus clouds, and they look like little tufts or wisps of hair. These are stratus clouds. They're flat, low in the sky, and we tend to see them when it's foggy and misty. And my favourite, cumulus clouds. Cumulus clouds are fluffy and bumpy. I think they look a little bit like cotton wool. And we can also get rain clouds. A cumulus could grow into one of these, a cumulonimbus. These are huge, high in the sky, grey, and if you see a cumulonimbus, it's probably going to rain. But to find out how rain comes from clouds, I think we need to take a closer look.
When the sun shines on the sea, the water heats up, turning the liquid water into a gas called water vapour. Water vapour is very light, so it rises up into the sky. This is called evaporation. As the water vapour reaches the sky, it cools down, turning into tiny water droplets. Clouds are made from lots and lots of water droplets. They bump into each other and stick together, getting bigger and bigger. until they're too heavy and turn into rain. The rain lands on the ground and runs back into the rivers and sea, where the sun heats up the water and the whole cycle starts again. This is called the water cycle.
The water cycle is incredible, isn't it? But did you know that we can measure the clouds so that we know when it might rain? It's called forecasting. The weather forecast tells us what the weather might be like in the next few days, and it uses special symbols like this, which means it's going to be sunny. This one means cloudy. And what do you think this one means? That's right, it means rain is coming. To find out where we get the information for a weather forecast, I've come to a weather centre. Forecasting the weather needs lots of information, and all of that is stored on a very, very powerful computer.
It's so powerful, they call it a supercomputer.
Can you hear that whirring noise? That's the sound of lots of fans spinning round and round. The supercomputer works so hard that the electrics can get really hot, so the fan helps to cool them down. The computer's first job is to work out where the clouds are, and it does this using a cloud-based recorder. This sends an invisible beam of light into the sky. The beam then hits the base of a cloud and will bounce back, telling the cloud-based recorder how high the cloud is. But there is another way to see the clouds from above. High up in space, there are special cameras called satellites that look a little bit like this. Weather satellites take pictures of the clouds, and they'll send all of that information to dishes like this one. Using the information from the cloud-based recorders and the weather satellites, the people who work here and the supercomputer can figure out where the clouds are going and whether or not it's going to rain. And look, here are some pictures of clouds that the weather satellites are seeing from space. How incredible is that? Here at the Weather Centre, all of that information about clouds is used to create the weather forecast. And they're filming one right now.
And we can expect to see cloud and rain.
I loved finding out how clouds are made. What was your favourite bit?
Can you remember what the clouds are called that look a bit like cotton wool? That's right, they're called cumulus clouds. Did you hear the whirring sound the fan made as it cooled the supercomputer down? And did you see the pictures of the clouds that the special satellite cameras took all the way from space?
Sometimes, when it's raining and chilly outside, it's fun to do things inside where it's nice and warm, like jigsaw puzzles. Lots of houses are kept warm with these. Do you know what it's called? That's right, a radiator. A radiator helps to keep our home warm because it's full of warm water that travels around our house through pipes. But do you know how a radiator's made? Let's find out. How is it made?
Radiator.
To find out how radiators are made, I've come to a radiator factory. They make 6,000 radiators here every single day. That's a lot of radiators.
They make lots of different types of radiators, but today we're making a white radiator with grooves.
Radiators can be made from different types of metal, but our radiator is made from a metal called steel. Can you see that one piece of metal is being rolled underneath and another is rolled on top? It's a bit like a sandwich.
But the radiator we're making isn't flat, it needs grooves in it.
Next, the metal goes through a really heavy press that chomps down and it bends the steel into that bumpy, groovy pattern. Look! Chomp and groove! Chomp and groove! Chomp and groove! The pressure when it chomps down is about 650 tons, and that's the same weight as 72 T-Rex dinosaurs.
But even that much pressure isn't enough to stick the two panels of steel together, so they need to go to the spot of the welding machine.
The copper tips are really hot. They melt the steel and that glues them together.
Now the radiator panels are stuck together, it's time for this machine to make the inside of the radiator. It sounds like a drumming band.
This makes a part called the convector panel, and it goes in between the front and back radiator panels. It's like the radiator's sandwich filling.
And look, the convector panels are being stuck to the radiator panels.
The spot-welded radiator panels have to be sealed at the edges so all the water doesn't fall out. An electric current passes through the copper wheels to the steel, which welds them together because everything gets really, really hot. It melts the steel a little bit like glue. Look, you can see all the steam coming off.
Another steamroller seals the two ends of the radiator panel.
This is where the two panels, a front and a back, come together and will be connected with a pipe, and that's where the water will go in and out of our radiator.
And that warm water is what heats up the radiators and our houses.
Here one comes. That looks like a radiator, doesn't it? But next, it's going for a bath to be tested for leaks. Two robot arms plug into the connector pipe and they fill the radiators with air, and then they go for a dunk in the water. If there are any leaks, we should see lots of bubbles. All looks fine here. Next, the radiators are hung up on this long line. It's like a giant washing line for radiators. So let's watch where they go with my special camera.
Look, can you see the radiator drying off? The droplets of water are dripping down the grooves. But where are they going next?
The radiators go to a huge tank to be painted. Let's go see. This tank is 25 metres long and the radiators will be in there for about a minute.
After that, they go into a big dryer.
I can really feel the heat, and now the first coat of paint is dry. Then they go into here where they're sprayed with a second coat of paint. It's called powder coating and it gives the radiators a lovely smooth finish. And here we have a finished radiator. Doesn't it look bright and shiny?
What did you like most about seeing how radiators are made? Can you remember the name of the metal that was used to make a radiator? That's right, steel. Did you hear the sound the press made when it made the convector panel? And did you see my special camera when it went for a ride on the radiator? So the next time you're cosy inside, you'll know how a radiator was made to keep us warm. And if it's raining outside and you see clouds in the sky, you'll know how they got there. I'll see you next time. Hello, I'm Maddie, and today I'm tucking into a yummy salad. It's got lots of fruits and vegetables in it, like lettuce, and my favourite, tomatoes. Just here, I've got red ones, orange ones, yellow ones, and even green ones. Tomatoes start out as a seed, but how does something as small as this grow into an enormous plant? Do you know how plants grow? How does it work? Let's find out. How does it work?
Plants.
To find out how plants grow, I've come to a tomato growing farm. Here they grow tomatoes in giant glass houses called greenhouses. They have thousands of tomato plants here, which grow over 80 tons of tomatoes every single week. That's heavier than a space shuttle. And the rows of tomatoes are very, very long. But what happens at the very beginning when a plant starts to grow? This container will let us see what happens to a seed when it starts to grow. And this is called germination. So, first we need some soil. Then cover it up, water, sunlight, and something called carbon dioxide, which it gets from the air around us. But it takes time for a seed to germinate and start to grow. So I think we should film this with one of my special cameras. This camera will let me film something called a time-lapse. And a time-lapse means that we can film something that happens really slowly, but when we watch it back later, it will happen much faster. We start our experiment on day 1. But it's not until day 4 that a tiny green shoot starts to appear from the seed. And then a little leaf pops out. The shoot grows taller and taller towards the sun. After 2 whole weeks, that's 14 days, the plant is 10 centimetres tall. Wasn't that time-lapse brilliant? But what happens after germination? To grow bigger and stronger, a plant makes its own food. And this is called photosynthesis. But to find out how photosynthesis works, I think we need to take a closer look. Plants get light from the sun, water from the ground, and carbon dioxide from the air. Inside the plant's stem, water is sucked up from the ground through a tube called the xylem. On the leaves are tiny holes called stomata that let the carbon dioxide gas in and let oxygen gas out. Inside the leaves are lots and lots of tiny cells. And inside the cells are the chloroplasts, which have a chemical inside called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll traps sunlight. And when the carbon dioxide gas, water and sunlight mix together in the chlorophyll, it makes glucose. And glucose gives the plant energy to grow. Wasn't that interesting? Why don't we go take a look and find out how they grow plants inside this greenhouse? Sunlight comes through the glass roof so the plants can take the energy they need from the sun for photosynthesis. And then the glass traps the sun's energy inside, which keeps the plants nice and warm. The roof also collects rainwater, so the plants inside the greenhouse have something to drink. That rainwater is pumped back into the greenhouse, just here. Can you hear it trickling? Most plants grow in soil, but here in this greenhouse, they grow out of these plastic gullies that hold all of the water and nutrients that the plants need to grow. It's like a mat of twisted threads. The xylem inside the tomato plant's stem sucks up this water and the nutrients to help the plants grow tall. The These tomato plants have already been growing for over a year, and because tomato plants grow up, it means that the youngest part of the plant is actually at the very top. Shall we go and take a look? This is Rolly, and he looks after the plants here at the tomato growing farm, and he's given me special permission to use this machine. It's called a hydraulic trolley. Up and away. Wow! Wow! Look at all of these tomato plants. We are so high up. These plants are 4 meters tall. And they're covered in these little yellow flowers, and they will grow into tomatoes. So to see some, we have to go to an older part of the plant. That's a bit lower down. Just 4 weeks later, and those flowers have now grown into tomatoes. But these aren't quite ready to eat yet. We say that they're not ripe. We want to find some that are. The tomatoes ripen and turn red by making more glucose. These tomatoes are about 9 weeks old. They are red and juicy, and I think they look good enough to eat. I loved finding out how plants grow. What was your favourite bit? Do you remember the name when the seed begins to grow roots? That's right, it's called germination. Did you hear the sound of the rainwater being pumped into the greenhouse? And did you see how high the plants grew when we went up the special lift? Have you ever been digging in the garden? It's fun, isn't it? For most plants to grow big and strong, they need soil. I've got a special type of soil here. It's called compost. But what's the difference between this compost and soil from the ground? Do you know how compost is made? Let's find out. How is it made?
Compost.
To find out how compost is made, I've come to a compost farm. We can make compost in lots of different ways. Inside compost bins, compost stacks, and some compost piles are so big they need to be moved by tractors. But here they make compost in big bags and big bins. Making compost is really important because it gives us a way to reuse some of our food and plant waste that could just end up in our bins. To make compost, we need a few important waste ingredients. First, we've got green waste. And green waste can be things like grass cuttings, weeds, there's some tea bags here, and banana skins. Next, we need brown waste. Here I've got some old egg cartons, cardboard, dry newspaper, and some dry leaves. Last, we need lots and lots of different types of bugs. Whoa. Look at all of these wiggly worms. These play a really important part in making compost. Wow. So how do all these materials get turned into compost? This is Ken. He looks after the farm and he's going to show me how to make compost. And first, we're putting in a layer of brown waste. Compost is made in layers, a bit like a big trifle. The first layer is brown waste, but with lots of sticks and twigs, which creates gaps so the air can move around it. Then we've got our green layer. This is our grass cuttings, weeds, and our vegetable peelings. On top goes another brown and a green waste layer. And finally, everything gets covered with a layer of brown waste. And I've got some dry leaves here to add to the mix. Make a lovely crunchy sound, don't they? Have you ever ever seen a banana go brown and mushy? And we say that it's decomposing. And that's what's going to happen to all of the layers inside this compost bin. But there's something else that helps with decomposing. Do you know what it is? That's right, it's the bugs. What can you see? There's a millipede, a couple of woodlice, a type of beetle. But let's not forget the worms. And I think we should take a look at one under my special camera. This is my special microscope camera, and it lets me see small things much bigger. There are so many worms. Wow, look at that. Oh, they look really squelchy, don't they? That there is the worm's head, and this is its bottom. And a worm can eat and poo its body weight in waste every single day. And this helps to decompose the waste and make the compost. But there are lots of other living things in this compost that we can't see. Things like fungi and bacteria. We call things this small microscopic. But they're so tiny, we can't see them with our own eyes or my special camera. In fact, in a piece of compost this small, there could be 1 billion bacteria. And just like the bugs and worms, they help decompose the waste. But what does the compost look like after a few months? Oh, okay, so the top few layers haven't really changed much. I can still see some newspaper and some vegetable fruit peelings that look the same. If we go lower, can you see they've started to mix together, and that is really beginning to look like compost. But does the compost look different after a whole year? Yes, it does. Can you see all of the layers are really well mixed together now, and we have a dark, rich brown colour. The creatures and bugs inside have been busy decomposing all of that waste material, and now we have a lovely compost. I think this is going to make some plants grow really big and strong. I loved finding out how compost is made. What was your favourite part? Do you remember what it's called when the material breaks down? That's right, it's decomposing. Did you hear the sound of the crunchy leaves? And did you see the worms wiggling around on my special camera? So the next time you see a compost bin, you'll know how the bugs and microbes inside it are working to make that special soil. And when you next eat a tomato, you'll know how it grew from a tiny seed. I've got a box of freshly picked tomatoes just here, all ready to turn into another salad. I'll see you next time. Hello, I'm Maddie. And today I'm going for a trip on a sailing boat. Look, there's one over there. The sailing boat is floating on the lake. There are lots of things that can float on water, like a big colourful beach ball and even ducks. But not everything floats. Some things, like this pebble, sink. So why does a big boat with people in it float when a small pebble sinks? Do you know why a boat floats? Let's find out. How does it work?
Floating.
To find out how floating works, I've come to a boating lake. This is Libby, and it's Libby's job to sail boats here at the boating lake. She's called the helm. And to sail the boats, Libby uses this, the main sail. This is what the wind pushes to make the boat move. It looks a bit like a giant bedsheet, doesn't it? The main sail helps to catch the wind and sail the boat along. The body of the boat is called the hull. And And look, can you see the hull is wide and flat? And the shape is really important for helping the boat to float along. Let's find out how. I've got a piece of modelling clay. I'm going to shape it into something that looks a bit like the hull of a sailing boat. A bit like this. I'm going to place this bit of modelling clay in a bowl of water. Let's see what happens. It floats. Now, I've got the same amount of modelling clay here, but this time it's rolled up into a ball. What do you think will happen when I drop this into the water? Let's find out. It sinks. But what makes the modelling clay float or sink? Well, it's all down to something called density. Density is how much space something takes up and how much it weighs, how heavy it is. When the modelling clay is shaped like this, it takes up more space than when it's rolled into a ball. So that means when it's dropped in the water, it floats because it has a low density. But when the same clay is shaped like a ball, it sinks because it takes up less space and has a high density. But how else does the shape of a boat help it to float? Let's take a closer look. When a boat goes into water, the hull sinks a little and pushes water out of the way. This is called displacement. When water is displaced, it tries to go back to where it was, and this pushes the boat up. We call this force buoyancy. The more water the boat displaces, the more buoyant it is. Everything on Earth is pushed down by a force called gravity. But when buoyancy pushing the boat up is the same as gravity pushing the boat down, the boat floats. That was really interesting. To show you how displacement works, I'm going to put some ice cubes in the glass of water. And I'm drawing a line on the glass to mark the water level. But all of this is going to happen really quickly, so I'm going to film it using my special slow motion camera. Okay, the camera is ready. Let's drop in some ice. Did you hear the splashing sound as the ice dropped in? It did happen quite fast though, didn't it? So let's look at the footage on my slow motion camera. As the ice cube goes in, gravity pulls it down. Then the ice cube starts to float. That's because the ice cube has displaced the water. And can you see the displaced water has made the water level go up? It's now above the black line. I think we should see floating in action for ourselves by setting sail. Now, you should never play near water without a grown-up, but I've got special permission to go onto the boat. Do you remember that the shape of the hull helps to displace water and let the boat float?
Well, most of the hull is hidden under the water. So I've asked one of the crew to attach my special underwater camera to the hull so we can see what's happening underwater.
Look at the wide, curved hull of the boat. That's the part the displaced water pushes up against to make the boat buoyant. And look, on this special camera attached to the top of the main sail, you can see the water being displaced.
This is floating in action! I loved finding out how a boat floats. What was your favourite part?
Can you remember what we call the boat when it's floating on the water? That's right, we say it's buoyant. Can you remember the sound the ice cube made when I dropped it in the glass? And on my special camera, do you remember seeing the hull of the boat as we floated on the lake?
Have you ever been to the seaside? Out at sea, there are boats, and on land, there might be a beach.
I like wiggling my toes in the sand.
I like to draw pictures in the sand. And I love making sandcastles.
really fun, isn't it? But where does the sand come from? Do you know how sand is made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
Sand.
To find out how sand is made, I've come to a beach. There's lots of different types of sand, and that's because sand is made of different things.
White sand is sometimes made of coral, which lives in the sea. And black sand is made from lava that came from an erupting volcano.
But the sand on this beach mostly comes from those cliffs. But how do these huge browny yellow cliffs turn into tiny grains of sand? To find out, we need to get up there.
It's really high up on the cliff. You must never walk close to the edge without a grown-up.
It's quite windy up here. Wind has an important job in making sand. Wind carries tiny, tiny pieces of rock in it, and when it blows against the cliffs, they wear the rock down a little.
You can't see these tiny pieces of rock in the wind, but you can see how they made this rock bumpy.
Over time, the bigger rock is broken down into smaller pieces. This is called weathering.
But it's not just the wind that causes weathering.
Even the sun weathers the rock. Can you see all of the cracks in the path? The ground has been baked by the heat from the sun, which has made it dry and shrink. We call this contracting.
And rainwater can also weather the rocks when it falls from the sky into these cracks.
In the winter, when it gets cold and frosty, the rainwater freezes and it gets bigger. We say that it expands. But when the water expands, it breaks the rock a little bit.
It takes a long time for weathering to happen, but whenever it's warm enough for the ice to melt and cold enough for the water to freeze, the rock breaks a little bit and,
Eventually, the rock breaks apart.
but what's happening at the bottom of the cliff by the sea?
Can you see the water is quite far away from the cliffs at the moment? The seawater actually comes in and out at different times of the day, every day. We call this the tide.
And look, on this beach, we can see the tide moving. When the water is far away from the land, we say the tide is out. But when it gets close, we say the tide is in.
We can hear the water moving in and out, can't we? When the tide moves all the way in, the seawater will crash against the rocks.
Look, the tide is getting really close to the cliffs now.
It wears them down a little bit every day.
This is called weathering too. When rocks are weathered into small pieces, the small pieces are carried away by wind or water. This is called erosion. And to show you how erosion works, I'm going to use this box filled with sand.
The sand has been shaped to look a little bit like the cliffs on this beach. What do you think will happen when I blow the top of the sand with a paper straw? That's right, some of it is blown off the pile.
That's the same as the small pieces of rock being moved by the wind. This is erosion. Next, I'm adding some water to the box. This is going to be our sea, and I'm using a piece of card to make the tide.
Oh, look at that! It's moving the loose sand at the bottom of our cliff and it's carrying it away. That's erosion too. Over time, weathering and erosion turns the rock into tiny grains of sand. And millions of these tiny grains of sand make a beach. So we know that sand is made from weathered and eroded rock. But do you know what rock is made of? Rock is made up of lots of different natural materials called minerals. Lots of sand is made of a mineral called quartz. In fact, almost all the sand on this beach is made from quartz. But quartz in this sand is tiny. So to see it a little bit better, you need to go and find a very special camera.
To today I'm going to be using a microscope camera.
A microscope helps us to see tiny things by making them look much bigger. And the microscope is connected to this screen, so we'll be able to see anything we put under it. Whoa, that is brilliant. But I can zoom in even further. Watch this.
Look, can you see the tiny white and shiny yellowish crystals? That's the quartz.
I can't believe how much quartz there is in just a small bit of sand.
And can you see the green mineral here? That's called glauconite.
Isn't it beautiful?
I loved learning how sand is made.
What was your favourite part?
Do you remember what it's called when the big pieces of rock are broken into smaller pieces by wind and water? That's right, it's called weathering. Do you remember the sound the water made when we were on the beach? And did you see the quartz in the sand under the special microscope camera?
So the next time you build a sand castle on a beach, you'll know how the sand you used to build it was made. And the next time you see a boat out on the water, you'll know how it uses displacement to float. I'll see you next time. Hello, I'm Maddie, and tonight I'm stargazing. Have you ever looked for stars in the night sky? They look like lots of little bright dots, don't they? And sometimes they even twinkle. But what are stars? And why can we see some of them twinkling in the sky? Do you know how starlight works? Let's find out.
How does it work?
Starlight.
To find out about stars and starlight, I've come here to a planetarium. Can show us pictures of the sky at night, and the pictures are projected onto this huge curved ceiling. It's called a dome. It's a bit like going to the cinema. Should we see it in action? This is Colin. It's Colin's job to look after the planetarium and turn on the projectors which project the pictures onto the dome. Let's go, Colin. Look how many stars there are in the sky. That is amazing. Stars make patterns in the sky called constellations.
A constellation is a group of stars that make a big picture when you join them together. This one is called Leo, and it's known as the Lion constellation. This one is called Pisces. We call it the two fish.
Should we see if we can find some? Look, over there, can you see 3 stars in a row?
They're in a diagonal line, right in the middle. Look, there they are.
Let's count them. 1, 2, 3. Those 3 stars are called Orion's belt. And if we join the stars together, they look a bit like a belt, don't they? Over there is another constellation. It's got 7 stars, and it's called the Plough. I think it looks a bit like a saucepan with a bendy handle, don't you? To find out why we can see the stars at night, I think we need to take a closer look.
When we look up at space, we see the stars as dots of light. In space, there are lots of particles of gas and dust floating around. When something big happens in space, like an explosion, gas and dust are pushed together into a ball. The ball of gas and dust gets heavier and heavier until it collapses, pulling in more gas and dust particles. All the dust and gas starts to spin really quickly, and as they squeeze together, they get really, really hot.
so interesting. Did you know that our sun is a star? Other stars in the sky look really small, don't they? But the sun is really big. That's because the sun is much closer to the Earth than the other stars. Let me show you how it works. We must never look directly at the sun, as it might harm our eyes. So this torch is going to be our sun. Oh, did you hear the sound when I turned it on? It made a click, didn't it? When we see the torch close up, it looks really big. But if I stand further away,
Now it looks much smaller.
because the sun is close to us, it looks bigger than other stars in the sky. But actually, there are stars out in space that are much, much bigger than the sun, but they look smaller because they're further away.
But to see those stars, we need to wait until it's nighttime.
So we can see them even better, I'm going to use one of my special cameras. This is a telescope camera, and a telescope helps us to see things that are really far away, close up. Oh, wow! Look, can you see the moon?
We can only see a small bit of the moon tonight, and it looks orange. Oh, wow! Can you see those stars in the sky?
That is brilliant! Whoa! It looks like it's glowing, doesn't it? Well, that's because stars are really, really hot and they give out lots of light. That light travels from the star through space to us here on Earth, and that's why we can see it. How great is that? I loved finding out how starlight works. What was your favourite bit?
Can you remember what we call the patterns that stars make in the sky? That's right, they're called constellations. Did you hear the sound my torch made when I turned it on? And did you see the stars in the night sky with my special telescope camera?
I love to look at the stars when it's dark outside, but when I'm inside, I like to relax, and sometimes I watch films. My favourites are animation films, like cartoons. Oh, hello. This is a flip book. Can you see? Each page has a picture on it.
And when the pages are turned quickly, the pictures look like they're moving.
Just like my flip book, an animation film is made up of lots and lots of pictures. Some animations even use puppets. It's called stop frame animation. But do you know how stop frame animations are made? Let's find out.
How is it made?
Stop frame animation.
To find out how a stop frame animation is made, I've come here to an animation studio. To make a stop frame animation, we start with this. This is called a puppet, but inside the puppet is one of these. It's called an armature, and it helps to make the puppet move when we make a stop frame animation. It looks a bit like a skeleton, doesn't it? Hello.
And just like our skeleton, the armature helps the puppet stand up and move. But to make stop frame animation, you need more than just a puppet. We need a background for our animation, like these houses. This is called a set.
This is George, and George is an animator. It's his job to move the puppet and take photographs.
And the photographs will be used to make the stop frame animation, just like our flipbook.
Today, George is going to animate the puppet so it walks along the street and then throws the ball up and down.
Look, George is attaching the ball to its very own armature. It's called a rig and helps him hold the ball in mid-air.
First, George arranges the ball using the rig, and then he moves the puppet into its first position. Once the puppet's in the right position, George takes a photograph.
And this is called a frame. To make a stop frame animation, we need lots and lots of frames. each time George moves the puppet and takes a picture, the picture is saved to a computer.
The puppet is going to throw the ball up in the air. So George moves the puppet's arms a tiny bit and then lifts the ball using the rig.
And I'm going to help by taking the next picture.
That looks great, but it will take George about an hour to animate the puppet throwing the ball. So I'm going to film George using one of my special cameras.
This is a time-lapse camera, which means we can film things that happen slowly, but when we watch them back, it happens much quicker.
Okay, I'm all set.
Look, George is moving the puppet a tiny bit before he takes each photo.
Oh, that look great.
And now George is moving the puppet towards the ball so he can pick it up and throw it away. And George is finished. Now all the pictures have been taken, they come here to an edit suite.
Whoa, look, here are all the photographs.
Before Ed puts the photos together, we need to take out the rig. Can you see Ed is colouring out the rig so it will look like the ball is moving on its own?
It's a bit like rubbing out pencil with a rubber.
And Ed needs to do this to every single frame for the whole animation. What else do we need to make our animation?
Thank you.
That's right, sound.
This is a microphone and it's going to record the sounds of me walking on gravel and bouncing a ball. A bit like this.
These sounds will make the animation feel and look real. And it's so much fun.
Sounds great, doesn't it? That was really fun. Can you see there's a bar on the screen? That's called the timeline.
All the frames are on the timeline in the right order, and Ed is adding the sounds I just recorded from the microphone.
When we make sound to match with pictures, we call it Foley. Right, I think we should watch the finished animation on a big screen. Ready? Here goes.
Look at the puppet! It's moving! Each frame that George made earlier on the set is being played back next to each other really quickly. So it looks like the puppet walks and the ball bounces all on their own.
That happened really quickly, so let's watch it again. The puppet walks in, gives us a wave, sees the ball, gives it a bounce, and then the ball bounces back. It's taken all day to make just 15 seconds. All of those tiny movements have been put together to make this stop frame animation. How nice is that? What did you like most about seeing how a stop frame animation is made?
Do you remember what each photograph is called that makes up a stop frame animation? That's right, it's called a frame. Did you hear the sound my feet made as they walked on the gravel? It was a crunching noise, wasn't it? And did you see my special camera filming George making our stop frame animation?
So the next time you watch a stop animation film, you'll know how it was made. And when you see some stars twinkling in the sky, you'll know how we can see them on Earth all the way from space. Right, I think I'm going to do some more stargazing. I'll see you next time.
There are lots of things